But the NBA draft was last night, and in general, there wasn't a whole lot of drama leading into the draft. It didn't seem like there was going to be any kind of drastic moves. It was kind of consensus that just Jabari Smith was going to be the first pick. And then here comes Paolo, which I loved. I loved Paolo's suit, and I love that he was the number 1 overall pick. It just was a little strange considering that Orlando had the number 1 overall pick, and it seems like all the reports were set, and they throw us a curveball. They didn't even meet with Paolo. They didn't even work him out. They didn't even talk to him until Monday. So it was a bit of a surprise. I don't know if I can go as far as drama because he is a big body, very talented, from blue blood, led Duke in scoring. So it's not like it is an outrageous off the board pick, but it did come a bit out of left field, especially considering Orlando has the number 1 pick. You don't need to smoke screen anybody. Nobody's jumping you in the draft. So you really don't have to keep it a secret. And generally the number 1 overall pick in the draft, particularly with the NBA, is pretty known. It's pretty understood who is going to go number 1. And this draft was a bit unique in that way, in that we didn't really have someone that everyone felt very strongly about. It just seemed that the reports were consistent. But I really like this pick for Orlando. They have a lot of young, nice pieces. As I mentioned, he is a huge body, 6'10", 250 pounds, plays with a lot of power. I think he's going to fit into what they're doing and building in Orlando perfectly. I'm excited for this move, and I'm excited for the way that the rest of the draft went as well. So the most debated or discussed player in this draft was Chet Holmgren, and that is because of his very unique body type. And we've been seeing, well, I've been seeing because I'm a nerd who watches grassroots basketball on YouTube. But for those of you that also do that, we've been seeing highlights of Chet for a long time. And obviously he played at another blue blood in Gonzaga. His unique body type and skill kind of drew some questions, and this is why he wasn't the number 1 overall pick. It sort of felt like he needs a little bit more development in his body. So where he goes is really going to matter. I love that he went to OKC. Colin and I talked about this a lot yesterday, but he's not only going to a place that has a great draft record, but it's also a place he can sort of hide. If he doesn't perform well in his first year, if he struggles or stumbles a little bit, that's fine in OKC. He's not under pressure to go in there and transform the franchise overnight, even if he is the number 2 pick in the draft. He's able, they're patient, they're not demanding. And with his particular body type, we all assuming that he needs to put on more weight to compete at the NBA level, this is a perfect place for him. I love that he ended up going there. We discussed it a lot this week. I thought it was the perfect place for him to end up, so I love that he did end up going there. And when you look at really what OKC is doing, this is just a perfect swing for OKC to take. Now, I don't think it's an outrageous pick, anyone that took Chet Holmgren. I just think it's better for him as a player, as a young player who obviously, needs to put on a little weight on the NBA level to go somewhere where that's not going to be demanded of him right away. But not only does OKC have 16 first-round picks over the next 5 drafts, they have a long history of drafting really great players. So that's not even in question. I love their draft last night. We're showing it here. Jalen Williams of Santa Clara, Jalen Williams of Arkansas, Ousmane Dieng of France, and obviously Chet Holmgren. And as I mentioned, they have 16 first-round picks over the next 5 drafts. So they're going to be developing for a while, and that's the perfect place for Chet to end up. Now, the last takeaway I have from the draft last night is that, of course, there's always a lot of panic, particularly when it comes to college sports. Anytime there's a change, everyone freaks out. Everyone freaked out about the one-and-done rule. Everyone's currently freaking out about NIL. And I think what you noticed, I noticed in the draft last night, was there were a lot of blue bloods drafted last night. A lot of college traditional powerhouses. You got Duke, you got Arizona, you got Kentucky, you got Baylor, you got Kansas, you got UCLA. There were 2 G League players drafted in the first rounds. Few international players. 26 of the 30 first-round players were college basketball players. There was so much discussion about all these players going overseas, all these top players going overseas, all these top players going to G League. The college basketball scene is going to be ruined. The sport is going to die. There's always this overreaction to everything. Everything's going to be fine. And when I looked at the balance of what happened last night, my other takeaway was NIL is going to help college basketball. The big argument for G League and for going to play internationally was money, because everyone's money situation is not the same. Yes, it's nice to go to college and get a bit of an education and get that experience and then go on to the NBA, but not everyone can just avoid not making money for a year. So having the option of the G League and going international is important. You should have that option. And now with NIL, you can go to one of these massive schools and make the money or more money that you would make in G League or playing internationally and stay here in the States. So I think it's great. I think overall, the college basketball season this year was a massive success. The ratings were up for college basketball this year, 13%. The Blue Bloods still reign. The NBA playoff ratings were up, and I thought this was a really nice night for the NBA. That being said, I think I said it was my final takeaway, but this is actually my final takeaway. I think the NBA draft should move around a little bit. I love what the NFL draft has done, going to different cities and making it a fan experience. It's been in New York forever. I understand New York, it's the mecca of basketball, but I think it'd be cool to see the NBA draft move around. I think it'd be cool to be in Seattle, a huge basketball city that obviously doesn't have a men's basketball team. It'd be awesome to see it there. Somewhere like Chicago, Memphis. I'll give you my list later on in the show of where I think they should move it around to, but I think that they should look into that. I don't know if I'm the first person to suggest this. I doubt I am, but I think it would be cool for them to adopt what the NFL has done with the NBA draft and move it around to different cities and make it a thing. Transitioning to Kyrie Irving. This has been a story for quite some time, and it's getting messier by the second in Brooklyn. I think at this point, Kyrie Irving's NBA story has been written. I consider him an all-time great finisher at the rim. Obviously, he's an unbelievable scorer. He has handles that we rave about. But he's also blown up every place he's been since he was with LeBron James. And I was very supportive of him, actually, when he was in Boston, because I never bought into the whole idea of Brad Stevens' unbelievable system. It's just a system. He can't fit into the system. All right. Well, we've seen that Brad Stevens' system didn't just work for Kyrie. Ime Udoka took them to the NBA Finals. It was obviously not just Kyrie that he wasn't resonating with. And that's not a knock on Brad Stevens' basketball mind. Obviously, they moved him to the front office and he's doing a great job. But it's now become very obvious that this is what Kyrie does. I just don't think you can win a championship with Kyrie as your 1 or 2. He's not a number 1. He showed that in Cleveland and in Boston. And he's not a reliable 2. He's showing that in Brooklyn. He turned his back on LeBron, and now it looks like he's turning his back on KD. Now, I don't really know what is going on in Brooklyn. Whatever report you choose to follow, because there's so many of them, whatever direction, good luck. I can't make anything of it. One minute it's Kyrie and KD are fighting. The next minute, KD is going to leave if Kyrie doesn't stay. Kyrie wants to stay. Now he has options that he would like to go to. Who knows what's going on behind the scenes in Brooklyn? And the fact that it's chaos is not surprising to me at all. Now, Adrian Wojnarowski did tweet about some of the locations that Kyrie would be open to if he did end up leaving Brooklyn. He said if Kyrie can't reach an agreement to stay in Brooklyn, he has a list of teams he'd like them to consider on sign and trades, including the Lakers, Clippers, Knicks, Heat, Mavs, and Sixers. None of those teams have cap space to sign him without the Nets' help. So this would be an elaborate trade if it does end up happening. It seems as if there is quite a bit of a drip towards that inevitable fate. When you look at the way the season ended in Brooklyn, they're the only team that got swept in the playoffs. They went into the season as one of the favorites to win the championship. That's quite a swing. The only swing worse was the Lakers, who missed the playoffs entirely. So he straight up didn't play in all but 29 games in the regular season and 4 postseason games. I just don't think that Kyrie can be your 1 or 2 on a championship team. That's not to say that he won't win another championship. That's not to say that he won't still contribute. We know what he can do when he's on the floor. Now, granted, take in mind that he only played in 29 games this season, so he was quite fresh when he was putting on those performances, which will likely not be the case wherever he goes next. But then, of course, you have to consider that maybe it will, because Kyrie is perfectly fine not only leaving millions of dollars on the table, but being completely unreliable. I don't have a problem with Kyrie as an individual. He is obviously a guy that does his own thing. He has done amazing things for the community. When we're talking about basketball and building a championship team, the evidence most recently and over the past few years is that you cannot put him in a position where you can rely on him to be available, to be consistent, and to contribute to a winning championship level team. So I don't know what's going to happen in Brooklyn. I don't know how any of these teams getting involved can feel comfortable about making a massive move for Kyrie. He's talked about retiring. Obviously, he chose to not play for most of the season last year. There's a lot up in the air. I just think any of these teams that makes a move for him, or Brooklyn, if they decide to work this out, really have to consider who else they're putting around Kyrie if they're truly going to make a run at a championship.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.